If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. I post a new Tom Brady video every day.
He will 100%, I'm saying 100%, have a call from a team asking him, hey, Tom, how you feeling? You feeling good? You been throwing? You in shape? You think you could come and throw a few for us? 100%, he will have that opportunity. Now, will he take that opportunity? He's selling shirts now that says, like, don't quit or never stop. It never ends.
Hello.
What do you think of Brady having 6 days between announcing retirement and saying never say never?
It's not easy to let go, Rich. Especially when you went for 53-16, led the league in passing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that Tampa Bay team except the defense. They can't rush the passer from inside. You know, my two tackles inside they don't believe in rushing the pass. Nah, we play run. It's not Earl Campbell in the backfield crazy. They're throwing the ball. But it's tough. When you're talking about someone with that kind of excellence, that kind of drive, that kind of focus.
Right.
So I think that he will. I do believe that by week 8 we will see him, and the 45-1 MVP. Yeah, maybe put a couple of shekels on that.
I would bet on San Francisco.
Hey, Phil Simms used to say something to me when I used to work with him on Inside NFL. He's like, you just walked away. You're in good shape and everything. I'm like, yo, man, it was time. He's like, they would have had to pry the helmet from my cold, dead fingers.
Do you think he's coming back? Like, really coming back? Or do you just, like, you're just thinking maybe there's a 5% chance that he gets bored?
Well, Kev, as the guy who's been driving the Brady narrative really this whole year, and has been ahead of the game this whole time, I actually think I think there's some sort of San Francisco-Miami thing. Now, you could tell me it's Miami ownership. He's running the team, not playing.
Do you want to get involved? Oh, you mean if that team comes up for sale?
Or Steve Ross, as a way to throw people off the scent of all the crazy shit that happened with him the last thing, says, I'm selling a minority share to Tom Brady that in 5 years, the majority will kick in, but it's going to be a transition. I think it's either that or I think he goes to the Niners for 1 year. And if I had to bet, I would say it's 60-40 Niners and 40% Miami. But I think it'll be one of those two things.
For somebody like Brady, I mean, he's right there. If Todd Bowles don't call the all-out blitz and the Bucs don't run it, I mean, come on. My linebacker, Levante David, is standing there with his hands on his hip as the play is going on. Unbelievable, man. I mean, just, come on.
By the way, gun to the head, San Francisco or Miami for Brady?
Miami.
Your last pass is to Mike Evans over the top of the number 1 cornerback in the National Football League for 6. And that's how you...
If you take the Brady we saw last year and switch him with Jimmy Garoppolo last season, do the Niners win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, definitely.
I kind of think they do too.
So does Gronk come back without Brady?
No, but that's the whole thing.
Does Godwin come back without Brady?
But if I'm Jason Light and I hear Tom Brady have only 3 business days or 5 days at his home saying never say never, I'm thinking, all right, the light's still on a little bit here.
Didn't he have a contract that he's leaving?
He still is on the team,
That's what I'm saying. I think we still have his...
No, I know that. And if I heard that, and even though, the final Man in the Arena episode is all about him walking away, and that gives you an entry of his mindset about what he's 44. Thinking. No, I know. That's the most amazing thing about him, Warren, is he's a 44-year-old guy, and I'm surprised that he's stepping away. I'm surprised he's...
Should have been.
Yeah. I know.
It's crazy.
Take me back to that weekend when Schefter and Jeff Darlington reported over the weekend. I think it was Saturday at 2:30 Eastern that Tom was, going to retire.
I listened to a lot of his interviews with Jim Gray, and one of them was really funny where he just he complained about how dark and cold it gets in New England. He was just like, it gets cold it gets dark at 3 p.m. And he really liked being out on the boat, is what I'd say. Reading the tea leaves, he enjoyed going to practice, putting in a full Tom Brady shift, being there at 5 a.m, and then going, hey, you know what I'd like to do? Let's go on a boat. So Miami would track there.
Well, Miami's also way closer to his other son who lives in New York with Bridget Moynihan. The case against San Francisco is it's too far away. It's too far away from, even if his family. Giselle moved out. He's still 3,000 miles away from his other son. He's very committed to being around for everybody. That doesn't mean that he couldn't decide in June 28th, I'm playing again. I've stayed in shape. And he basically does a 6-month run in the Niners. Just like, I'm going to live in San Francisco. You guys stay here or whatever it is. I don't think Trey Lance is ready. I think Tampa Bay needs a quarterback too. And it's like, there's been that Jimmy G rumor about why wouldn't they trade Jimmy G to Tampa and for the rights for Brady and a 3rd-round pick, something like that.
I was in Mexico that weekend and my phone was blowing up and I hadn't heard from Tom. And so I didn't know anything about it. And I don't know if I'm 10th on the list, Dan, or if I'm 20th or 50th or 100, but I'm on the list. Somewhere at some point, he would have reached out and said, Jim, I'm out. I'll talk to you later or whatever it would have been. I didn't get that. So I called Tom's agent and he didn't know anything about it. I spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Brady and they didn't know anything about it. They had just spoke to Tom and Tom said that wasn't the case. So we've been involved with each other for a long time, Tom and I, doing this show. I always take Tom at his word because Tom's word is really good.
As I think back on the retirement, on the very sort of awkward retirement Instagram, it was all Bucs related. It sort of felt like he retired from the Bucs, not necessarily from the National Football League, right? It didn't acknowledge anything else. And so I keep coming back to that. Mike T, what do you think of this? You've lived down there in Florida. You talk to a bunch of people. Is your expectation that this retirement will stick?
I don't think so. I agree with Ninko. First of all, 12 teams need starting quarterbacks. They're not doing their job if they're not calling. A decade ago, I did the same thing with Brett Favre of Green Bay. I called them all the time to say, hey, is Favre available? And I think at some point, Tom Brady's competitiveness, look, he came out of the womb a competitor. He's going to go to the grave as a competitor. And driving your kids to school is wonderful, but it doesn't satiate that desire. So maybe it's San Francisco on a 1-year deal. There's so many other teams that are going to need quarterbacks. So those 12 teams aren't doing their job if they're not checking in on Tom Brady.
Would you have a problem with Brady saying, I don't know right now, and then decides summer, I kind of do, and plays it that way because he maybe wanted some other place?
I don't have a problem with it because it's so hard to let go, Rich.
It is.
You just, come on, with a career like that, with numbers like that, and still performing like that?
Right.
I left because I couldn't rush the passer anymore. I knew it was a play-action pass. Brett Favre did that little wiggle, came out. I tried to rush this kid. He had me locked up. He threw it over the top, the driver. I told the kid, you want to let me go now? The ball is with gone. The kid finally let me go. I looked up, 85-yard touchdown. I said, yeah, it's time to go home. I knew it was pass, and I still couldn't get the pass rush I want. That's when I knew it was time to go home. Brady's last play was over the top to Mike Evans on the best cornerback in the game, over the world champ.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
The champ.
Right.
Yeah.
And his last snap was a handoff to Fournette for a touchdown to tie the game. Down 27-3, ties the game 27-all.
Like I said.
I know.
And it wasn't Drew Brees. It wasn't Peyton Manning with the arm strength.
No, it wasn't none of that because Drew Brees can throw it past 5 yards and did it to Peyton.
In the air on a rope.
On a rope. In the bucket. Boom.
What do you think Arians is thinking? What do you think he's thinking?
Please come back.
Just every day texting like, hey, Tom.
Hey, what's going on, Tom?
And also, if you really read that Instagram post carefully, it was a goodbye to Tampa. And this is why I went all in on this the first couple weeks of January. I think he was done in Tampa. I think guys like LeBron, Brady, whoever, they have the ability to kind of sniff their team and if they don't totally like the smell, they're out at this point of their career when they're just about winning titles. I think he knew Tampa, that was a wrap, that they were not winning a title in Tampa. So I'm either not playing anymore or maybe something will happen with San Francisco or maybe, I'll be an owner in Miami. But I think it's one of those two things. I really do.
And I want to go back to something here quickly, actually, because it just jarred my memory. Sorry, Nink, but you were the person in the middle of it all. You guys had Favre for a year. The Jets had Brett Favre for a year. He really wanted to play in Minnesota all along. He retired waited until you made your alternative plans, which in that case was trading up to take Mark Sanchez in the draft, and then you had no choice when he unretired but to release him, and he got to go exactly where he wanted to go. So there's a blueprint in place here by one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Do we have the basic facts of that right, Mike T?
Yeah, and those conversations were on parallel tracks. Once we hired your Rex Ryan, we really wanted to pair him with a younger quarterback for the future. So we were trying to move up in the draft. At the same time, we were trying to make it work for Brett, who wanted obviously to get back to Minnesota. So those conversations do go on parallel tracks, much the way I'm sure Tampa's doing it right now. Like, they have Kyle Trask, they're going to look at their other options, and I'm sure they're going to try to keep Tom Brady alive, and I'm sure other teams are going to call him because, again, a dozen teams this year will need a starting quarterback.
Go ahead, Nick. I cut you off.
I don't see Tom mulching or cutting the grass or driving the kids to school or something. It was like, he's gonna be putting 7 yards of mulch down by his house. Like, he might need 100 yards of mulch.
Yeah.
Because of the palatial estate,
yes,
as you would say. But I feel like at a point here, he's probably going to get a little stir crazy.
Like when OTAs, mini camp, training camp. That's
and the regular season, when that hits you. You get an itch.
Look, the reality is the overwhelming majority of pro football players leave the game because of someone else makes that decision for them, right? Whether it's their bodies just can't do it anymore or 32 teams don't want them anymore. Tom Brady is the opposite. He's 45-1 to be the MVP after retiring. So this is a person who will have every option available to him, and he has earned that. I do not think it would be the least bit surprising if he does come back.
So I thought it was weird that before we even knew he'd be the 9th best player and the 2nd best quarterback at age 44, I thought it was weird that he would hang it up that early. I think that this is a guy who just wired in a completely different competitive way than everybody else. I mean, everybody else, I think now there's a genre of Joe Burrow stories, and I've told a bunch of them, where it's like, oh my God, Joe Burrow is just different. Like, Brady's that times 100, man, and it's 20 years of that. It's not 3 years of that. And so I am not discounting anything that Brady would do because he's unlike anybody we've ever seen in the sport.
It feels like people still don't believe it's real. Do you believe it's real?
I do, but I also believe that he doesn't know if and when that urge will come back. So I think he answered the question, to the best of his ability and really honestly when he said, never say never, because he's been doing this for 30 plus years. And he's not leaving, Dan, because there's anything physically wrong. He led the league in every statistical category for a quarterback. So it's more of an emotional thing, perhaps, that he'll be 45 and doesn't want to get pounced on by Von Miller and Aaron Donald and these guys. But I truly believe that if he wanted to play physically, he could continue to play at a very, very high level. And he's even said that, probably well beyond next year if that's what he decided.
That's it for this video. I post a new Tom Brady video every day, so please like and subscribe. That way you'll always have a new Tom Brady video to watch every single day.